In the United States, there's two dominant veiltail types, and veiltails in general, normal-eyed veiltails. Veiltails with telescope eyes are called broadtails, okay? But the veiltails, there's two major types. There's actually a third type, which are Chinese import, and Ken Fisher, Danny Renditz often has those in the spring. But the Philadelphia veiltail came to the United States from Japan as a gift from the Emperor of Japan to the World's Fair in Philadelphia in the 1890s. And so that genetic pool was a remnant of that fish. Only one survived the transportation to the U.S., but a group of amateur breeders have moved into keeping that genetics and that phenotype alive. And so if you look at it, the Philadelphia, it's been carried on. There has been one commercial breeder back in the, I'm going to say 60s, but gradually it fell to only hobbyist breeders like Al Foster, Al Toma, myself, and 4 or 5 other people. And today, that's pretty much the case, and we'll get into that. The English veil, at the end of World War II, Winston Churchill saw these fish, liked them, and took them home, literally. He didn't take them home. He had the Navy take them home back to England. It's pretty cool, a cool thing. And the English people from England have been breeding English veils somewhat differently than the Philadelphia veil. And we can talk about it later, but they came from the Philadelphia stock originally, but the English keepers in England have done a much better job than we have. They have, when you look at Rory's fish, who I brought today, his fish are very uniform. When you look at them and you open it, you get the spawn, they get up to a size of, say, this big. There are calls, and you throw those away. But the fin variation, length variation, squareness of the tail is all superior to the Philadelphia. And we don't really know why. Maybe they're just been at it longer than the Americans, or they added stuff that we're not sure about. But it's really pretty unique. So,
can you expand the screen?
Can I expand the screen? Maybe.
Computer screen.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. So there's a couple sad components to this, and on the Philadelphia side, we're expanding. Thanks to Brian Rhodes, we now have albino Philadelphias, and they're really pretty cool. I mean, you know, it's a fish that's not pure white, it's kind of pinkish, and it's got brilliant red eyes, and it's not quite fixed, but it's very close, and the phenotype is really, really nice. He's done a beautiful job. He pulled the blue back out of my stock, which is exceptional fish. Some of the blues that he gave me as babies I've distributed, and the scalation is really, really quite nice. We got some pictures of that. So the Philadelphias have come back. They're good. We're working on bringing back metallic reds. They were almost lost, and they're back. And I think this year we'll have some really nice fish. Rory's got some of them today too. They're not colored yet. They're pretty cool. The English stock, we can't get them into the United States, and even in England there's very, very few breeders now. And so it's a difficulty. In the US, there's 2 lines, we think, maybe 3, and we're trying to figure out who's got the genetics that they'll share. Some of these crotchety old guys like myself just won't trade, you know. So it's a problem, you know. Hey, can I have some of this? Oh yeah, sure. Well, when can I have them? Oh, when I breed them next. And so 3 or 4 years down the road, how'd you get down? Oh yeah, I did some of those. Oh, I forgot. So we're trying to maintain English genetics without doing an outcross. I've had 2 spawns, approximately 1,000 fish, and I have got 3 phenotypes. I think that's the right term. It's a mock metallic, which is a uncolored fish that's pearly and it's got normal eyes with a little slot in that normal eye, so you know it's a mock metallic, that carries the blue belly gene, and so you get very soft colors. It's really kind of cool. And it's got clear gill plates when they're young. And then we have mats, and mats are, you know, whitish fish with pink gill plates and black button eyes. And then we have what they call pseudomats. And they look, to all appearances, to be a mat fish. They have no reflective scales at all. But they breed much like a calico fish. And so you'll see that. We've got some fairly good examples of that in the presentation. So we're looking to try to figure out how to maintain the genetics of the English fish without doing an outcross. And one of the breeders is in Hawaii. It's not difficult to move them back and forth. There's a famous professor, veterinarian in California, that's got some of my original stock, and he appears to have some nacreous or calico fish. So we're hopeful, you know, but we're not quite there yet. So this is the current blue Philadelphia on the left, and you can see that the blue Philadelphia, Brian Rhodes did a really good job. This tail is really nice and short, and so and the finnage, it's not just a slate blue fin, it's got some really nice white on the edges of it, so it gives you a really nice depth.
You mean the scales?
The scales, did I say, what did I say?
Finnage.
Sorry, the scale, sorry. And then these fish, and the picture's not the greatest pulling up on the screen, but these are Jim Alderson, the veterinarian out in Riverside, California, English fish, and these actually have a couple metallic scales, so they're not pseudomats, they're actually nacreous fish or calico fish. So we think we're okay there, but we know that we're coming up on needing an outcross, because I've got the original English fish that most of us have, about 2007, something like that, so it's been 10 years. And we're not breeding them every year, so we got a little bit of time, but we're a little nervous. So my mentor in life, goldfish-wise, is Al Foster. Al lives in Sauk Rapids, Minnesota. Lived there his whole life in an old schoolhouse, and he is, in my opinion, solely responsible for keeping the Philadelphia Veiltail complete. Dave Manley's also participated in that, but Dave is often doing color genetic experiments, and so if you go and look at his fish, yeah, you can tease out something that looks like that in the phenotype, but it's got all these other experiments in it. So phenotypically, genotypically, the closest thing to a pure Philadelphia line is Al Foster's fish. And all the other originators or keepers of that fish from the previous generation are now gone. And so guys like Al Toma, you know, and Carlos Perez is still living up in upstate New York, but he's not breeding. So, you know, but Al's got some beautiful fish. This is one of his females and some of his other fish. Phenotypically, I have the same exact fish. They look very similar this year, and we're hopeful that the metallic fish are back here to stay. And so it's pretty exciting. And you know, they get giant, the fins get large. They're pretty nice fish. I also keep calico fish. The metallic fish that we have now are out of calico crosses. So when you, just like over here, when you breed a calico to calico fish, 25% are these uncolored fish that are metallic, but they're this, the greenish brown or whatever you call that color. And what you do is you sit there with them and you watch and you watch and watch, and as the fish get older, they demelanize and you get red fish or white fish. Well, genetically, if you're breeding a bunch of calico fish and you keep those, sooner or later, some of those, that demelanization turns on very quickly, and so you're able to tease out red metallic fish out of a calico cross by taking the young colored fish and watching for the fish to turn red or white at year one. And so then you pull those fish and you breed those fish out to each other, and then you have a metallic line, and that's what we've done.
I think it's worth also mentioning that you don't usually, a red metallic fish is a fish with a demelanizing gene. And a good calico, you don't want it to demelanize, you want it to maintain that black color, which is the melanin.
Right.
So you don't usually cross a red metallic with a calico, because what you get is called Sakura. You may have seen these. They're a calico no black. They're demelanizing calico. And the quickest way to diminish your calico line is to make that cross, and all of a sudden you lose all your black and blue color.
Yes.
But sometimes you have to introduce vigor, or you're losing a strain. You may do that, but then it's that slow process of tweezing out the calicos from the rest.
We have 3 color calico Philadelphia Veiltails: black, red, white. The blue color exists. It's not extremely stable. We hope to fix that by getting some small fish, getting them outside early enough while they still retain the blue, fix it in the sunlight, not under artificial light in the house, and then having them winter over outside. And well, I think we'll get there this year. We're pretty optimistic. As in Bristol Shabunkins, in order to get and keep blue calico fish, we're pretty sure you have to have black in the tail. You have, you look at calico fish and you buy beautiful calico fish. If they have clear tails, your chances of keeping blue color in the next breeding generation, not very good. So,
Gary, do any of the metallic veils have that Sarasa pattern, or are they all solid?
I have one that has a red-white pattern, and I bred, it happened to be a male, and I bred that fish to a pure red, and so we have that cross. Rolly's getting some of those fish today, and so I have one spawn of that this year. So we're hopeful. So. Here's a couple more pictures of my calico this year. We like this. We have a little bit of issue, in my opinion, with the face. If you look at the fish over several slides, we have some face changes going on. And Greg Rao is who we see each other do fish every week of the year, which is kind of fun. And he lives in Dayton, about 50 miles north. But we have a couple fish that we don't like the shape. We're not breeding them this year. So this is my favorite female that I bred this year. She is 1 year old, and what I like about her is the extremely short tail. So if you look what the English have done, their fish, instead of having these long flowing tails like the classic Philadelphia, they're more short. By the time the fish are 5 or 6, they look just like our classic Philadelphia Veil. So the tail length continues to grow for the age of the fish. And if you select for really long tails, you got beautiful fish for 2.5, 3 years. And then after that, I'll show you what happens. So we're systematically selecting for a shorter tail at this age, and the peduncle here has got to be as thick as you can get. So this fish is, to me, very ideal. So this is my dominant female for 2017 breeding season, or 2017-2018 breeding season. So this is what happens when your fish, you have really long tails. You know, if you've ever been in the swimming pool and take a beach towel and put it in the water with you and then try swimming, it's like, you know, you're like dragging this sea anchor, you know. Well, that's what happens to these veiltails, is that the tails get too long and they get tired. And so if their peduncles are thin and the tail is really long, they decide to take a break, and before long, they just get the idea that, oh, let's go hang out. And you come down and all your fish are standing on their tail. It's really obnoxious. And so we're breeding for shorter tails, because when they don't carry that wet tail, that big long tail around, they don't get worn out, they swim normally. So the other thing you do, is, recently, this is a new innovation of the Philadelphia Veiltails Society. I couldn't find these fish. And a lot of us have moved to spawning mops made from cheerleader pom-poms, right? These fish have figured out that they can hang in there and it's comfortable. So you go down in the morning, turn on the lights, you can't see any fish, and they're just sleeping up in the cheerleader pom-poms because it's really comfortable and they don't have to support their own weight. So anyway, so we're moving towards shorter tails. So the issues on Philadelphia is whenever you have fish that have been line bred for over 100 years like this, and from hobbyists, very few hobbyists, you know, we have tail standing. We have people saying, oh, those are so pretty, and they take all the fish with extra long tails. And actually, all the people who want to have a video of my babies, they invariably pick out the longest tails. It's great, I mean, it's great for 2 or 3 years, but when the fish are old, they stand. And short bodies can be an issue. The original Philadelphia Veiltails, after the World Fair, there were 6 fish shipped. At the end of the World Fair, there were only 1 left. So the amateur breeders outcrossed the fantail-like fish. And the bluefish were specifically crossed to a blue Aranda, and I can't recall the name, but the blue Aranda was a domestic breed from Arkansas that you still see at the 5 9 and the 5 9. Dating myself, sorry. I used to see them at the Kmart's when they used to have fish, which used to be called Kreskies, and the slate blue Arandas that they bred to never developed head growth, but they were Arandas, and so that fish has a longer body, and so over the years the breeders have gone to a more Aranda body than a Ryunkin body, and so every once in a while you'll see imported veils come in, and if they have a hump, they're really not good addition to your stock, because we don't want a hump. You know, you get a hump and then you have a hump and a giant tail on top. It doesn't swim great, it doesn't last very long. So tail set's an issue, and I've got a picture of tail set I think coming up. We know a lot more now than we did back in the 90s when there was very few of us, and we've got people like Rob and Brian who are, you know, really have backgrounds in genetics, and we have James Alderson, who's a veterinarian. These people, we understand inbreeding enough that we're trying to prevent it actively instead of passively. You know, okay, let's plan to do this, and so I think we're pretty successful, and we're pretty happy. So crow's foot, and I think we haven't, the fish for Rolly have not been called, so we're going to do that today. And at the end of this, we're going to pull those out, I think, and we'll put them in a bowl and look at them. And when you do your first call, you call from the top. You can do from the side and the top, but if you do them from the top in shallow water, you sit down and look at them. And a crow's foot is remnant of a butterfly. And so at the base of the peduncle where it goes into the tail, you have this thing that looks like this, these big ugly fin rays that used to hold the tail up flat. And you know, veiltails are more like this, right? And so if you are culling small veiltails and you get this effect, we call it crow's foot, but we throw those away. We don't keep them, because if you carry that gene on, or that set of genes on, you end up with that carrying through the stock. So that's eliminated, and you'll see that. Instead of coming out like this when you view it from the top, that's really a bad drawing. Okay, should have rehearsed this. That's not too bad, okay? You get an effect like this. And the tail comes out like this. And you can actually see these fin rays trying to branch sideways like it's a butterfly. So here's a fish, and this slide, these are 9-month-old fish. And they're not horrible. They're kind of my backups. But this fish is a tall. Anybody see why? Basically, the back end of the fish here curves downwards, and the tail's sitting at the bottom of it. Whereas if you go back, couple slides, see, this is up much higher. The space between the lead fin ray and the end of the dorsal fin is much smaller, and it's set up higher on the back. So it's very difficult to, when you call a small fish, to see the difference in this. But once they're about an inch long, if they scoot at all, you gotta get rid of them, because they end up, this is a kind of a cool fish, he's still carrying it, but when he's tired, at the end of the day, he's kind of skirting along the bottom, and it's no good. It's no good for to have that in your line. So here's some babies, you know, and you can look at a couple variations. Now these are Philadelphias still. The English don't necessarily have these same calls, which is kind of weird to us. We don't understand it. But here's a pretty straight tail. That's not too bad, huh? I would say this peduncle is a little bit long, okay? If I would look at this fish and I'd say, oh, this is pretty good. See, the peduncle is very short, and the distance between here and here is very short. That's a positive trait. If you look at this fish, it's a pretty nice looking fish, except look at the tails twisted here. And so you're never really sure when you see this in a fish like this, whether it is netting damage when it was small, you know, or it grew in spurts like Rob was just saying in his little genetics lecture, you know, did it stop growing and start growing? And then this fish here is a chop tail. And a chop tail is a non-veil tail, and it carries the veil tail gene, but it's not square tail, and you kind of look at it. Sometimes you'll see advertised fan tail from veil tail. That's a chop tail. And you say, well, it's a beautiful fish. Well, it's actually pretty important, because when you go to breed fish every other generation, you should really breed to one of these. So you do not get too long of tails. And we have seen homozygosity for the veil tail trait. In other words, all the alleles that line up to give you Veiltails. And the traits for Veiltail: high dorsal, square back tail, and long pecs. I think those are the three major traits. If they all match up, and there appears to be two sets of genes, if they all match up, you get midgets. And you have all these beautiful, beautiful Veiltails that never get much bigger than this. And it looks like that collection might even be lethal, or maybe it's just inbreeding. And so we tend to take the longer, thin fish and breed to a shorter tail fish every generation or every other generation. So. English Veiltails. They're very related to the Philadelphia Veiltail. In the 40s, they were the same fish. We're not sure what the English have done exactly, and they're not telling. And that's kind of fun. So this is a calico fish I used to own. Yeah, I think he's still in the freezer. And he won some big prizes and really great fish. The reason the English fish, we have all these things called pseudomats and mats showing up, is that to chase the blue color, which they dearly like, they found out that blue color is best expressed in what they call a blue-bellied fish, which is a fish that has genetics to get rid of the guanine produced in the fish, or at least minimize the guanine produced. And so if you want blue fish, they found out you get the best soft blue colors if they added blue belly into their stock.
Before you change that one, I just
Sure.
want to point out, we've used the term nacreous
Yes.
times.
Yes.
There's sometimes some confusion between calico and nacreous, often interchanged, but I think technically nacreous is a fish with a combination of mat and metallic scales. You can see this, you can see the metallic ones. You can have a fish that does not have very few metallic scales, but still has calico color. So I think using the term nacreous to describe the spangles, these little metallic scales on that background, is a good way to distinguish between calico color and nacreous scalation.
Now, would two nacreous create like a full calico?
That scale pattern goes hand in hand with the calico coloration.
Calico genetics too.
But you could get a solid red fish that has some metallic scales.
That's right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
technically that's not what we go for with a calico color. We're looking for a tricolored fish. But you can use both words interchangeably.
Or quadricolored.
Quadricolored.
Yeah. So here's some more Jim Alderson's fish, and I guess these pictures just don't blow up that well, but fish, if you look very carefully, see they have, you can see the metallic scale there, and the metallic scale there, and there. And so those are nacreous or calico fish in this case, and they breed like that. And those fish came from my stock. The English fish have exceptionally high dorsal fins. They're really, really nice. You might ask, well, why don't you guys just breed the English to the Philadelphia? And we kind of want to keep them separate, because once you breed them together, you may as well just throw them all together. And we're not doing that at the present time. Besides, it would probably kill some of the older guys who think that would be terrible. So, babies. We've got some babies here today to look at of these, and these are English. And if you look at them carefully, there's a little bit difference in fin length, but they have very square tails for fish this size, and they're very uniform. The major issue, at least I'm having, is tail fin split or not split. And but the fish are really interesting. They do not have this big scallop tail, or what we call chop tail, like the Philadelphias. I think we find that interesting. And they have a different fin type, which is more like a ribbon, and it's like a tail that is only, if this is a veil tail, like this, the ribbon tail is literally like a ribbon coming out of the back end. And it's really kind of strange. And I don't know what they've done exactly, but they have superior tails, and the calls are different than ours. It's kind of neat. So these are current breeders in North America that we know of. So Al Foster has Philadelphia's, James Alderson's a veterinarian in California, in Riverside, California. He has both English and Philadelphia's. Dave Manley in Chesterland, Ohio has Philadelphia's. Dave Linnemeyer has English. Dave Schlescher has English. These two breeding groups are identical. I have both. Brian Rhodes has both. Greg Rao, a friend of mine in Dayton, has my stock. And Harris Zane has both English and Philadelphia. He lives in Hawaii, but we're not sure that his fish are pure. We think that he crossed them back and forth. And so it's interesting. But you can see, for a population of over 300 million people, there's not very many people that have this fish. It's kind of rare. So. The English pool in the United States is really tiny. I mean, there's not many people that have them that are different than my fish. They have better and shorter tails, which give the fish longevity. The calls are different, chop tail versus ribbon tail. We wonder about the need to do an outcross with the English, and we're actively talking about it, and we're not sure what to do. Be nice if we could figure out how to get the English fish to the United States. The last time the English fish came to the United States, they came through Canada, which was legal then. And it doesn't appear that you can do that now. And so it has to do with health certificates for VHS and this sort of thing.
Is that just the UK or all of Europe?
That's probably all Europe. Okay. Yeah, you know, if you're going to import fish, you have to have a VHS certification. And so the other thing they found out recently in the last couple of years is that goldfish will carry the koi herpes virus, but not get sick from it. And people are really concerned about that, because all these goldfish coming in from all over the place, they're certified VHS free, and they're not looking at koi herpes virus at all. So it's kind of a problem. So we don't know what the answer to this is. Are the genetics in the Philadelphia and the English now different? The tail structure is different. The English puff tail, which is what we breeders call the English tail, because it's so much shorter when it's immature. You know, when it's like 1 year, it's really nice and short, and it's like really nice. And we just don't know if it's genetically different than the Philadelphia. I don't think there's anybody that has enough money to figure that out, because you know, you got to do it all yourself. So, and we don't know how many people have pure stock in North America that you know, they aren't raising their hand. You know, we think that because you're on Facebook and you talk to a couple thousand people every day that you know what's going on. And there's a lot of people that, like Al Foster, he doesn't do internet. He doesn't, and to get those pictures, I had to talk to his wife. I said, you know, Stephanie, I want to do this thing, and Al is my mentor. I want to get pictures of him. Oh, I can do that. I says, okay. So, but you know, he won't do it, you know. And so you want to talk to Al, you got to call him on the phone. And so if he doesn't know you, he might not pick up the phone. And so you might have to write him a letter. So communication with some of the guys that have been in the hobby for 40 or 50 years and now in the 70s, not all that easy. Dave Linnemeyer, Dave Schlescher, Al Foster, Dave Manley. Those four guys, notice there's 6 breeders of some of these fish. Those 4 guys, Dave Linnemeyer does internet. The other ones, they don't own a computer. So it's kind of interesting. So we're not sure if there's other breeders, but there might be, but we don't think so. So, okay, I think that's it for that one. Questions?
Look at that mug.